I'll call this meeting to order, and we do recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. With respect to the agenda, there are no additions from staff, but I would like to, under council reports and discussion items J3, add an update on the closure of the Warrior Cafe and some of the work that we've been doing to try and address that issue. And included in that is some discussions we're having about enabling an emergency shelter as well. So if we can add item J3, we can give you an update, just a verbal update on how that's progressing. Other than that, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Goulet, so moved. Councillor Vic, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And then with respect to the the minutes, adopting the November 2nd one, and then just an amended version of the October 19th. We can do that in a single motion. So motion to adopt. Councillor Runge, so moved. Seconded. There's only 4 of you now, so you have to pay attention, Mr. Goulet, Councillor Goulet. So all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, and Director Bolton, drum roll, please. Thank you.
So as part of Council's strategic goal of enhancing community engagement, staff was asked to create a video that described how all the projects of the city were working together and how they all fit together and how they fit into the city's transition plan. So working with our communications consultant, the following video was created to answer the question of how are we moving forward.
Quesnel has a rich history as the home of the DeKalb Carrier people who have lived here for millennia, also as a supply point to the Barkerville Gold Rush and a major hub for forestry and natural resources. However, the world around us is changing, and we're changing too. As a city, we're focused on building a bright, sustainable future and creating opportunities for our community to thrive. So, how is the city moving forward?
The enhancements and development to our city centre have brought energy to our streets and attracted people to our local shops, restaurants, social places, and event spaces. Investment in infrastructure like Spirit Square and the hosting precinct has positioned our city as an event hosting destination.
Trail expansion and development opens more opportunities for residents and visitors to be active, connect with nature, explore our city, its history, and attract tourism.
Innovative projects like Sprout Kitchen create a hub for food entrepreneurs to launch, expand, produce, and process on a larger scale, increasing market capacity.
The Forestry Innovation Centre is a space that fosters research and development to explore the future of wood products and innovative manufacturing options.
Fuel management reduces the severity of wildfires. It increases public and firefighter safety, and it makes our forest ecosystems more resilient.
Our healthcare recruitment program attracts more physicians and healthcare professionals to our growing community every day.
Investments in playgrounds and childcare make Quesnel an attractive home for working families.
Affordable housing initiatives and multi-family development incentives are expanding livability and supporting Quesnel's housing needs.
Through partnerships with other organizations, we're making sure that businesses have the resources they need to get through current challenges.
Following extensive consultation and planning, work will be implemented over the next 20 years on the revitalization of our waterfront spaces, adding recreational facilities, art and cultural installations, an RV park, and more. We all know what a great place Quesnel is to live. Investing in these initiatives and future projects ensures our city continues to move forward together. So let's stay connected at quesnel.ca.
That's the set piece for our transition strategy, so it'll be on our webpage for us to enter.
And are we not putting it on the front end of Connect?
No, that was the other video.
Oh, that's the other video?
Yeah, it's already there, yeah. Yeah.
Two words, well done.
Sorry, it was a work of love and a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, I really got to thank our manager of economic development and tourism and Laura, our executive assistant. It was invaluable, the amount of work they put into this. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up then we have an open opportunity for anybody who's here with the changes that we're proposing to the business license amendments. And if anybody's here for that, we can make an opportunity for them to come up and speak. I'm not seeing anybody. It's not a public hearing, so I don't have to call 3 times. So if I don't see anybody, we can just move on. Okay, then why don't you guys come up and I'll get you set up. So we've asked the new owners of the former CNC Wood Products to give council an update on where Kandola Forest Products is at and where they're going. Manager Robinson, who's sitting at the back with our forestry innovation program, and myself have been having an ongoing dialogue, I guess I would put it, to try and make sure that we are positioned to understand your business and to help that business be stabilized and grow. So I thought it was a great opportunity for you to come before council and catch everybody up. So Neal, if you want to do introductions for both of you, and we'll turn it over to you.
Hi guys, so I'm Neal. I'm the president of Kandola Forest Products. This is my father, Paul. Paul's lived in the community, and when I say community, Quesnel and Williams Lake since the 80s, and he's had many businesses here, and this is one of his latest ones. I was born and raised in Williams Lake till I was 15, and then I moved to the coast, and I've come back as recent as 3 years ago. So I'll go through our presentation here. Sorry. So we're going to talk about three things: who we are, some of our accomplishments, and our objectives looking into 2022. So, as many of you guys know, CNC was owned by the Strata family, and he did unfortunately pass away and was handed off to his estate in 2007. And in 2020, Callidus Corporation took over. And now in 2021, it's Kandola. And the reason I bring this up is during that time with Callidus Corporation taking over, the culture of the place shifted from a family mentality to a corporate mentality, and we've now switched it back, and we're starting to see the dividends of that. So we are the largest manufacturer of paneling and interior products in North America, and we compete globally. And our main competitors are importers who import the products that we make here, and they sell them to big box stores. And these are two of our product lines, paneling and shiplap. And we've since we've taken over, we've done a few things which has made us stand out. A few of those things are more environmentally friendly paint, nesting packs of paneling and shiplap to get a higher recovery from our dimensional wood that we're using to make these products, and so on and so forth. In September, we started to ramp up, and we hit $1 million in sales. And October and November, we've actually increased that much more than shows here. And we have 46 positions currently to date. But the biggest thing I want to touch on in this presentation is our ability to recapture the partnerships that CNC once had, but actually we fostered these relationships, and we have a bigger market presence than CNC did, notably in Canada through Home Depot, and in the United States through Home Depot as well. Previously, I believe CNC was only in a quarter of the Home Depot stores, and we're looking to go coast to coast by the end of 2022. And you know, over the past week, we've saw how, you know, logistics and the supply chain disruption from the coast of Vancouver to getting resources up here, such as groceries and other things like that. So similarly, in our business, we compete globally with manufacturers in China or South America and Europe, and customers, they just can't get the product from them. So we've noticed like a delay in Quesnel here. A 1-week delay seems crazy. Imagine ordering product back in February of 2021 and not going to be able to get it till end of the year or even next year. So this is being in Quesnel here and manufacturing in Canada. We are located so there's no supply chain disruptions, and that's a huge advantage that we have compared to other people that we compete with. So some of the goals we have looking into the new year, we need to match our demand. And how we are going to match our demand is a few things. One is adding more labor to the site. 2 is acquiring new machinery so we can do more throughput, put out more product. And also a new product offering is a structural beam facility. And you see in brackets that says non-structural. You know, through this process of creating glue laminated beams, which is considered a mass timber product, we also, you know, took advantage of non-structural products, such as making siding, fascia, trim for exterior products for the house. So we really built upon the I guess the value added part of what CNC had, and we've extended the product line and the product mix, and our order file is growing daily and weekly, and it's with big box store customers, and it's into the United States and it's into Canada, which is fantastic. And you know, we've I wrote here that we're looking to secure and control a fiber supply. You know, Greenwood Forest Products, they went under earlier this year because of the lack of fiber supply, and you know, we don't have a forest license. However, we do have partnerships with other mills and facilities where we receive that lumber from. And when I'm talking about controlling or securing a fiber supply, it's not just logs. We're looking to gain just partnerships, you know, long-term relationships with mills such as West Fraser, etc. And we are really expanding our presence in the industry, and we're looking to do that more and more. So, you know, we have an in-house printing press, and it allows us to be vertically integrated into big box stores. And we've actually grew the marketing arm of the company. So now we're looking at, you know, buying someone else's product, bringing it to our facility, packaging it, labeling it with a private label, and selling it as well. So there's multiple things we're looking at. But you know, I just want to touch on these points, and I'm sure you guys will have some questions here.
Terrific. Thank you. Did you want to add anything? Are you sure?
Sorry, he's covered most of it.
Yeah, well, dads usually look over the shoulder and make sure everything's, you know,
you got to keep an eye on kids.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council with the presentation? And then I want to highlight a couple of things, Paul, that we've got on the go just now, so council's aware of that, because we may be coming back to council to talk about that. So any questions or comments? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Just a question. Probably about 30 years ago, I bought quite a quantity of the cedar tongue and groove strips. And we have a vaulted ceiling throughout the living area of our house. That was put up 30 years ago, and today it looks like it was put up there yesterday, like it's really held up and endured well. Are you still into producing that particular product?
First of all, I do believe your house is on a label right now that we're sending to the States, because that's the only vaulted ceiling that we did. Secondly, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, we're still producing that product. You know, cedar products, as you know, it's a higher end wood. It's a high end product. It's something we do sell, and it's something that people can't compete with us globally. In China, they have juniper. It's not the same as cedar. It doesn't look the same. They try to sell it as cedar. But that's one of the advantages of being here in North America, and particularly in this region, where we can source cedar close by, and we can make a high-end product like that. And that's something that our competitors cannot do.
Councillor Vic.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm so glad that your operation is doing so well, and the future looks bright for sure. Regarding the non-structural beam production, is this product suitable for facades on the exterior of retail businesses and et cetera?
Yeah, so there's a few products we do that are suitable for facades, but mainly the products we do in that facility are structural beams, structural posts, and non-structural products. So we can also do, you know, siding, wood trim, you know, all sorts of things in different ranges and lengths. We can go all the way up to 20 foot and as wide as 8 inches. So it's quite a nice product. So I guess the answer to your question is yes.
That's great. The reason I asked that is the City of Quesnel has a grant opportunity for businesses to improve their facades, and you've probably seen how there's some businesses that have opted for a natural wood facade look. Yeah. And if you're offering a product that can meet that need rather than purchasing this material out of the community, then I think there's a great partnership there with businesses looking to improve their facades.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be fantastic, and I think it'd be great for us too, because we make all these great products, but we need photos of them too, right? So to have it in our own community where we can go and show customers, even when they come see us, hey, what products do you make? Oh, let's go downtown and I'll show you them on a
sounds good
on a building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a couple of things that I wanted to cover off that we've got ongoing. Kandola is now eligible for some of the Northern Trust innovative funds. So for research and development, business case analysis, et cetera, where CNC wasn't before. And so we've been looking at getting you connected with them. So I did talk to the CEO, as I committed in our last meeting, and we are able to make arrangements for the right staff to be able to come down and sit down and look at those kinds of opportunities. So that is something that we can do, in short order here. Some of the areas that we've talked about, and Neal's pointed out, and we've had quite a dialogue around the raw material supply. We don't want Kandolas to be in the same boat that CNC was, where they kept chasing the raw material and therefore couldn't really spend the time and invest in the market, because it's basically a market that's fully available to you. So we have talked about the possibility of, instead of a 1x4 raw product, you get a 2x4 raw product and resaw, and so that's another conversation we're having, and West Fraser's indicated, that. But the other piece is our community forest initiative as well. That could provide some roundwood in conjunction with the First Nations partnership, if that's the path that you're on. But in particular, we've had some dialogue around the deciduous profile of that, because we will have to cut, I think it's 27,000 cubic meters a year just in the community forest alone of deciduous, and then all of the First Nations woodland licenses also have deciduous partitions as well. So we're going to be looking for somebody to do something with that deciduous more than chip it or burn it or whatever. The other interesting one, Neal, we've been talking about is the whole sawmill, right? If you end up just being a reman facility, even if it's a resaw, then that sawmill could be available, whether it's for training, whether it's another partnership, because basically the front end of the mill isn't being utilized in that model. So I've reached out and talked to CNC. We've made them aware of that, and the ongoing conversations we're having with the First Nations, especially around some of our joint licenses, is another area that we're exploring to take a look at whether that's a venture that we could look at too. And then I think the most recent conversation we've had is around the mass timber part of things, and you've already mentioned in response to Councillor Vic, looking for those places in town where you can profile your product. But mass timber in particular is a pretty, high-end one. The government's just about to release its mass timber strategy. I did have a conversation with Minister Callan about that because he's responsible for that strategy. And Director Norburn's going to be reaching out, and I think has been trying to get in touch to talk about maybe one of our upcoming projects, the fire hall, the childcare center, some of the things we've got on the go could be a place for us to incorporate some of that mass timber into those projects, so you've got a place when your customers are in town or wanting to see it, that they can actually see it. But the other piece we want to do is get the Northern Health Capital team to sit down with you, because their intention is 5 seniors care facilities that will be mass timber facilities. That's their design. And then Interior Health is planning 6. So there's 11 fairly large seniors facilities over the next 10 years that will have that mass timber component to it. So we definitely want you to get connected with them. Yeah. And the other piece that we've talked about is really how do we get the architects, the designers, others to really understand that. That's why I'm mass timber, that is. That's why I'm interested in what the government's approach is in their mass timber strategy. And then the more that we can get designers and others to understand your product line, the more you build the domestic demand for it, because there's lots of building going on just now. So as I indicated, we've had quite a lot of ongoing conversation and with Neal and his team in particular, and Paul's been involved, and Aaron's heavily involved in walking this forward, and Amy's shop is now involved in helping us to make some of the connections too. So that about cover it?
I think that does, yeah.
Well, thank you for your investment in our community. It's greatly appreciated. It would have been a shame to see something that has got such high market demand disappear. And I think as a council, I can speak on behalf of council, we're committed to make it really work. The one thing I do want to say though, Neal, and you didn't highlight it, one of the interesting parts of the conversation we had was, under the former approach, they were a value-added mill with a commodity mindset when they went to the market. And that really stuck with me, and I actually talked to a couple of ministers about that one of the things you guys are bringing to it is you're a value-added mill with a value-added approach to the market. So you're looking for the people who are going to pay that premium as opposed to just shoving volume into it, right?
Exactly. So we don't want to be the I would say the West Fraser of paneling, where we're just trying to ship up volume. We're trying to position these products to get the highest return every time it leaves the door, and that's one thing we've changed from the former company's approach to doing things. Because with the order file that we have, the customer base that we have, the demand that we have, and the current pricing model that we have, we're going to be in this community for a very, very long time. And no, it's great to see. And then I do got to say, Bob, I think one thing that you've touched on and you got your finger on the pulse on is that that gap with the mass timber between the architect's understanding and us manufacturing. It is something we'll have to work together to match. So I'm happy you've introduced us to people and we're moving along with that.
Good. Fantastic. Well, thank you both very much.
Guys.
Appreciate it. All right, Kelsi, come on into the hot seat. It's your, no, we did that front end one where no one was here for it, so. And I think I met Kelsi, was it just last week, I think I met, and we're now email buddies as things have evolved over the last couple of weeks, so it's great to have Kelsi doing the work that she's doing at this particular time. So you just need to make sure your mic comes on and introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsi Andrechuck, and I'm the Community Social Coordinator. I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation on the Clean Team program and the Day Labor program and the other aspects of the Strengthening Community Services project. My PowerPoint's pretty dense, so I'm just going to get right into it. Strengthening Quesnel's homeless services. So upcoming projects. Develop and coordinate social media campaigns to increase public education and decrease stigma and discrimination of unsheltered homelessness. In progress, communicate with partnerships and peers to identify a location to establish locker units that will be available to those who are homeless. Communicate with both groups to determine where these locker services are needed. Also in progress, communicate with partnerships and peers to identify a location to establish temporary outhouses for those who do not have access to public bathrooms. Continue working with the Clean Team and Day Labor program peers and partnerships. Regularly collect data and information in regards to the population's needs and the amount of needles and garbage being collected in the community. Work collaboratively with BC Housing and other agencies to establish warming shelters for those who are restricted from accessing community services. Through stakeholder consultation, identify a location for acquired warming shelters. In progress, collaborating with other service providers to provide alternative resources in regards to food services in Quesnel, considering the Salvation Army stopped operating on November 12th, 2021. Completed, coordinate the Clean Team and Day Labor program, which will provide very short-term work for unsheltered individuals. Strengthening Quesnel's homeless services budget. Category, the Clean Team and Day Labor program's peer stipend dollars, which are essentially the peers' wages. So in the description, these programs are both separate, but I've actually just collaborated both programs into one. So the total expense for the Day Labor program and Clean Team is $128,993.28. The Clean Team and Day Labor program's transportation for peers, so Handy-Dart and transit passes for those who aren't central to their routes. A total for this is $4,911.30. The Clean Team and Day Labor program's equipment, so like garbage bags, plastic gloves, grabbers, sharps containers. Total for all this is $3,744.84. Public information and community involvement. Social media campaigns, $500 per campaign and up to 4. Total for this is $2,000. Public information and community involvement. Public education and community stakeholder print media, total $6,000. Increased services and supports for unsheltered homelessness. Contract for business improvement area, $5,000. Increased services and supports for unsheltered homeless populations, so increased bathrooms. This will look like 2 outhouses at locations to be determined. $120 a day for these outhouses for both for 52 weeks. A total for that is $46,737.60. Capital expenses to address immediate unsheltered homelessness needs and safety. So this project will be locker units, 18 lockers and 18 locks for a total of $2,426.54. For all of these projects, a total of $199,813.56. So just a little bit about peer labor. Who are peer workers? Peer workers are individuals with lived or living experience in the areas of homelessness, mental health, and substance use. Peer workers are unique because they offer community cleanup services while creating shifts in social stigma that reflect lived experience. Peer workers are individuals who may have intellectual disabilities or people with lived or living experience in poverty, mental health, and/or addiction who wish to be included in the employment area. Why peer workers? Peer workers provide a very unique set of skills and knowledge emerging from their lived or living experience. These personal experiences can foster meaningful connections and provide a deeper sense of understanding, aiming to create new networks and reduce social stigma. Peer work provides employment opportunities to those who may have been excluded from the workforce due to issues of homelessness and/or substance use. Peer work meets people where they are at without trying to control or limit levels of substance use intake, therefore becoming more self-reliant and included in the employment area. Overall, peer work makes significant contributions to people's level of health, financial security, mental health, and prevention of illness by improving quality of life, daily functioning, and promoting self-sufficiency, among other benefits. Introducing the Clean Team and Day Labor Program. The operation. The Clean Team and Day Labor Program is a program that consists of peer workers who provide community cleanup services, focusing on the community's high traffic areas, such as schools, parks, and sidewalks. The Clean Team and Day Labor Program is funded to run for a total of 40 weeks, which is November 1st to July 31st, 2022, with each peer performing 4-hour shifts twice a day. On a Monday to Friday basis, this will look like 3 full-time peers completing morning cleanups and 2 full-time peers completing evening cleanups. On a Saturday to Sunday basis, the same shifts will occur during the weekends, but the part-time peers will be completing the Saturday and Sunday sweeps. The goal, besides achieving cleaner streets and sidewalks, the goal also includes engaging business owners and the program peers to be connected and create positive relationships. The empowerment of creating healthy connections between business owners and peers aims to break isolation and stigma and create social and emotional connections. In addition, the goal is also to include business owners and community members in discussions about peer-based work, partnerships, and issues related to the homeless population in our community. The description of tasks. Along with regular cleanups, needle sweeps, and general garbage pickups, the program is designed to address issues like graffiti and the messes left behind dumpsters or in squatting destinations, such as areas where people have been sleeping, therefore leaving behind large amounts of garbage and mess. The role of the Community Social Coordinator. So my role includes relationship development, building trust with peers, as well as providing empathy and support, sharing knowledge and information with peers and partnerships, preparing work plans and timelines associated to the program's activities and projects, planning and organizing the program's routes, connecting with partnerships, and communicating regularly with the program's peers. My role responsibilities include connecting with peers and partnerships regularly, program planning, organizing peers' stipend dollars, and keeping track of the budget and expenses, reporting issues and program reports to council and partnerships. My obligations to peers include managing peers' concerns and potential triggers as best as possible, considering each peer's lived experience without shaming or blaming to provide a safe place where peers feel heard, valued, and regarded as equals. Communicate with peers effectively, providing clear instructions and procedures, sharing accurate information and resources that can help peers achieve personal health and wellness goals. Provide peers understanding, support, and management tools to facilitate well-being and success, and provide management skills and flexibility to peers who may struggle with time management, social anxiety, and/or issues around communication. The role of the peers. Each peer is expected to meet and abide by the program's expectations. These expectations include complying with the program's policies and mandates, maintaining healthy boundaries with other program peers while on duty, connecting with the community social coordinator about any issues or concerns, and having a positive attitude and demeanor. Below are some of the roles and core values each peer must condone during their work through the Clean Team and Day Labor Program. Mutuality. Peers must value the empathy and support that comes from similar experience shared among the group of peers. Honesty. Peers will be honest, trustworthy, and accountable for their actions. Dignity. Peers must honor and respect the worth of all individuals. This includes respecting others' views and opinions. Health and well-being. Peers will value health and well-being and support others' journeys of health and well-being. Self-determination. Peers will be accepting of individuals' inherent right to make their own choices, even if these choices to health and well-being look different than their own. Social inclusion. Peers will aim to improve the terms of those who are homeless and work with partnerships to increase inclusion, connection, and understanding. Personal integrity. Peers must communicate with others respectfully in a behavior that is kind and polite. Learning. Peers must make an effort to learn and grow throughout this employment opportunity, hopefully creating personal growth and development. The value of peer support and connection. Connecting with another individual who also has lived or living experience related to homelessness and/or substance use can be a vital link for someone struggling with their own situation. Peer support and connection can be an effective prevention strategy, can moderate the challenges with life-challenging events, and provide a sense of empowerment. The empowerment and hope that stems from peer-to-peer relationships also creates a deep understanding that another individual has also been in the same shoes that you are in and that you are not alone. Connecting with fellow peers can sometimes help individuals navigate the often complicated maze of substance use and mental health resources. A peer who interacts with another peer will not only feel understanding and connection from the similar life experiences, but these interactions can also foster hope. Hope in the possibility of treatment and recovery that includes health, well-being, and quality of life. The Clean Team and Day Labor program gives peers opportunity to associate amongst one another and also connect with business owners and community members. One of the goals of the program is to link peers and other members of the employment area together to create a more balanced and inclusive approach. The program understands that peers with lived or living experience can offer a unique perspective, and business owners can offer exceptional mentor skills, knowledge, and leadership skills, all of which are important elements to the program. The support and connection that results from interactions with business owners, other peers, and community members is ultimately one of the goals of the program, which will help give peers a renewed sense of self-worth, confidence, and belief in themselves. The Clean Team and Day Labor program's creation. The Clean Team and Day Labor program has emerged from a collaboration between people with lived experience, such as peers, and a variety of social sector agencies. During the development of the Clean Team and Day Labor program, the peers expressed a desire to contribute to solutions that address the challenges and judgment they feel from the community. At the same time, many of the partnerships involved in this program, such as the Native Friendship Center, Seasons House, Bridges Supportive Housing, Westside Mental Health, First Nations Health Authority, AC&D Insurance, and the Bylaw team have expressed a huge desire in helping this program succeed. The organizations listed above have fully supported the initiative to employ people with lived experience to complete meaningful work, raise awareness, compassion, and care throughout the community. The Clean Team and Day Labor program is a result of the peers and the participating agencies collaborating and working together. Throughout this program's development, the peers' employment has emerged as a means of lowering barriers. In this sense, peer employment has allowed the peers to get paid for using their lived experience to produce meaningful work and connect with others. The Clean Team and Day Labor program report from the peers. Jody, the opportunity to be a part of the program that accepts my lived experience and allows me to use my life lessons as a tool to help the community is so awesome. Gina, I love the work. I love being part of something positive, and I love being included in the workforce. This work has already changed my life. I feel like an equal in our community. John, I feel really good about the work I do, and I feel good about contributing to the community's health and well-being. According to the peers, it is lived experience which allows those seeking support to feel connected and understood. In terms of the Clean Team and Day Labor program, peers have a key role in sharing information, building connections, and working together to keep the community clean. All of the program peers have expressed the positive benefits and importance that this program delivers, allowing them to feel a sense of purpose and confidence in the work they provide. At the same time, the program allows peers to thrive in a profession that creates stability in their lives. Aiden, this work has given me a sense of purpose and meaning. I can afford basic necessities without having to constantly worry or go without. The Clean Team and Day Labor programs report from partnerships. Sandra Lewis from AC&D Insurance. The Clean Team and Day Labor program has changed the amount of garbage and paraphernalia tremendously. The change is like night and day. Monica from Caribou Keepsakes. It's been really nice having the Clean Team and Day Labor program peers. We've noticed a great difference in and around our building. Many partnerships have expressed positive feedback in terms of the program's operation and the peers' effort and dedication. As this program has encouraged peers and business owners and workers to engage with each other, there has been an increase in connecting to resources, experiential sharing, and building relationships. As the Clean Team and Day Labor program continues, there is desire from partnerships to continue working with the peers on a very personal level. The partnerships have described a feasible and beneficial relationship with the peers that improves the subjects of well-being, learning, and growth for both the partnerships and the peers. And that's my last slide, so any comments or questions?
Thank you, Kelsi. And Kelsi, I'm going to ask Director Turner, because we probably should have contextualized this for council, what Kelsi's role is and where the funding's coming from. And then we can come back to the questions.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And that was a bit of the intent of the beginning of the presentation, and I should have probably did a little introduction. Sorry, Kelsi. So again, we've applied for funding, which Council is aware of through the Strengthening Communities program, which we've received funding for not only Kelsi's time, but a variety of projects. A lot of those projects, with the help of our grant writer there, we have got a significant funding for a number of projects that we hope that we can work with the community to see if which projects are the best fits. And that's, I think, how we explained it to Council at the beginning. We have established a working relationship with the BIAs, who are working very closely with Kelsi. First of all, the first goal was to get these day labor programs, and Kelsi just gotten that rolling, and we're very, very pleased about how well it's being taken up by the community. Then these other projects that you've seen on the first slide are some of those other initiatives that will be being discussed. All of those initiatives, as we move forward, will be coming back to Council.
And the intention, just so we're clear, the intention is it's the strengthening money that we're using for these programs, right?
This is all grant funded.
Yeah, just so we're clear on that. Okay, so open for questions and comments. Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Kelsi. Really great. Being and looking at this, I can see the change in those peers because I see them on a daily basis coming around the facility on the west side, the Friendship Center, and that engagement. You can see that they're really proud of what they're doing as they move forward to this engagement. So I think that's a really big piece of this is engaging those peers and allowing those peers to be introduced to those businesses or those storefronts or those people. That little hello goes a long way. Trust me, they have changed. Looking at the ones you have, I've worked with them and been trying to get that, but they've changed and they've really done something. My question only in this, and it's come up maybe as something to think about, is they're picking all that garbage and they've used our dumpster because they've opened it because they've had so much that they can't carry it where they're supposed to take it to. So there can be some thinking around where does that stuff go and how do they dispose of it instead of carrying it on their back or in a cart through there. So very, very well done. Short time frame to do this. I know it's not easy and sometimes it goes, but I think it's a great program and it's a great start to helping individuals overcome their barriers. So thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. And do you want me to touch on the garbage? Okay. Yeah, so we're kind of working, like I've brought it, Tanya and I've kind of been talking about that topic. And Bylaw's been really helpful. If they see peers out and about and they see a peer with like a huge bag of garbage, too much to carry around with them, they've been really great. They've been able to like pull over and then put it in their truck and then dispose of it. For other peers, like what I've just been telling them, because there's no designated spot as of right now, just the little white bags that they have, the little white garbage bags, I've just been encouraging them to put it in the city, dump little ones on the trail and like on Reed Street and stuff, just those if it'll fit. And then, yeah, we're working on hopefully kind of finding a designated spot for them to put it and then it be collected. Yeah.
Councillor Paul?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kelsi. That was an excellent presentation. I'd just like a little bit of clarification on how the workers, whether they're part of the peer program or whether they're part of the clean team, are they paid they're paid out of the grant, I take it?
Yeah.
And are they get minimum wage at least, don't they?
So they get $20 an hour. It's just cash. So that's kind of peer work all around in Canada. It's just it's always cash, and yeah. So it's $20 an hour, and so the 4-hour shifts, it's $80 at the end of their shift is what they get.
And are you their supervisor, like assign the work and sort out any problems?
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Vic?
Hey, Kelsi.
Hi.
I just want to tell you, preliminary, the Downtown Association's really pleased to be have a partnership with you on this. And the initial results, I can tell you that the directors of the QDA are really pleased with how things are going so far. And we're really pleased to be part of this, and we're looking forward to it continuing, particularly the building relationships with those that are doing the work, the peers, and building some trust and strengthening those relationships. That's what we're most looking forward to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the peers have also said nothing but good things about those connections. So yeah, that's awesome.
So when the BIAs are putting in for their levy next, just saying in terms of long-term sustainable funding. So I don't have anybody else on the speaker list, but I think that's one of the things for council to consider. And so again, for clarity, Director Turner, the Kelsi's work as a contractor and the funding for this, what is the end date in terms of that funding window and some of this work?
Thank you. This work runs. It was a full years of funding, but it started in October, and then we got a little bit of a late start. So it'll end around September, somewhere in there. I believe, I just can't remember if it's the beginning of September or the end of September, but it's I believe it is the end of September. So we will be definitely looking to have an excellent summer and looking for some ideas about what we'll do in future, given how successful this has been thus far.
Yeah, and I think, well, I was joking about Councillor Vic's comment, but I think it is something that we need to sit down and figure out together. And it was one of the discussions I was having with ministers when I was down in Victoria about longer-term sustainable funding for these kinds of initiatives, and where is that going to come from?
And
so
I would just want to point out one other item. It is actually a stipend, not a wage, that we pay to peers, and that's a standard in most places. I do want to note, however, that the BIA in Prince George does do these contracts and does pay wages, does employ the peers. And I am going to be talking to the BIA about taking a model like that as well. There's just a bit difference in terms of an attitude perspective and that we might want to discuss there as a community as well.
Yeah, I think certainly what we're building is a foundation for us to think about how we engage in this longer term, because the benefits are all around to everybody, from the peers themselves through the businesses and to the community in general. And so that is really the struggle, is how do we make this a sustainable program and sort that out. So, and as I was joking when Kelsi came up, since I've gotten back and we've had some issues having Kelsi available to us, because Director Turner has been carrying a lot of the load on the social planning side of things. It's been great to have somebody that we could tap on the shoulder to deal with some of the issues that have emerged over the last little while. So I do appreciate that very much as well. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Kelsi? Okay, so thank you. You got your first kick at the can and coming to council under your belt, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Policy and Bylaw Committee, Councillor Runge.
Thank you. I was going to have a little joke there about the PowerPoint, but all right. So this report is to inform Council of what was discussed at the last Policy and Bylaw Committee meeting on November 4th. So it was a shorter meeting. The council, the committee reviewed the timeline to update the council procedures and policies in preparation for those elections next year, the municipal elections. And so we agreed that staff should work on a timeline, and so that we start to come back in chunks that we can implement and review the following documents: the election bylaw, the council procedure bylaw, electronic procedures, council code of conduct, and meeting norms. So they'll be coming back in chunks, and I believe we'll be sending them to all councillors. I think that was what we discussed for input. Anyway, so that was our first one. So we're currently in the timeline phase, so that you'll be updated as we progress down the road here. The second thing that we talked about was the appointment of officers and a delegation of authority bylaw, which is will be addressed later in this agenda under staff reports. And we reviewed it, we looked at it, and I think that's all that we need to say. It's going to come out a little bit later. And our next meeting is this Thursday. You know, you're welcome to attend.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Councillor Runge? Seeing none, Councillor Vic on the Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report was covered very well by a video we just watched earlier tonight. So I'll only add that obviously Executive was given a sort of a sneak peek of that video, and I can tell you that we were all very impressed with the work done there. Most specifically, we're really impressed by the participation of the variety of staff who contributed to the video, which is a unique change in direction, which we all really appreciated. And you've set the bar really high with this one. It was really well done, and we look forward to the next production.
And I have to note that the city manager got none of the ribbing tonight that he got during the meeting for being the bookends of the video. So you're getting off lightly tonight, city manager. I had Councillor Elliott had intended to be here tonight, but he's come down with a bit of the flu. So I'll report on the Finance Committee. Effectively, we took our first deep dive into the capital budget, gave some recommendations to Director Bolton and the staff to refine it, and that will then be completed coming back, I believe, to FSAC for one more, take a look, and then it will come to council. So we are on track to get it buttoned up so that we can take advantage of having our capital approved prior to the height of the bidding season and get a lot of the pre-work done. On the non-market assessment change, you can see the notes here that this is the very preliminary. This is what we think is going to happen with your assessments from BC Assessment, and of course it'll be subject to change as things evolve over the next little while. And then we began our discussion around the budget survey, and of course this time we'll be able to use the Connect Quesnel platform to do the survey. And one of the areas that we thought this time that will help us continue to deepen people's understanding of what the city does and you know what we don't do is to actually take all of the areas that we do work in and ask for people to prioritize within those areas. You know, pick their top 3 that need more work or whatever the case may be, and really just try and get people to settle in on these are the things we do. We don't, you know, do healthcare. We don't build seniors housing and so on. So we're going to play around with that. If any of the council members have any ideas about budget survey questions or focus for the budget survey, please send an email to Director Bolton and Councillor Elliott so that we can feed that into the hopper. So That's it. The next meeting is December 8th, and again, the capital will come back for ratification by FSAC, and we're beginning to put some of this stuff together for the operating budget. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question on the budget survey. It notes here that it will be released through the Let's Connect Quesnel portal, but I'm wondering if that budget survey is going to be exclusively electronic. I'm thinking about seniors and others in the community that don't have internet or don't use it, and if there would be an opportunity for a hard copy response.
Director Bolton.
Sure. Anytime we do a survey electronically, we always make sure we have hard copies available for anyone that needs it.
Yeah, and I think we need to really be careful in that continuous mantra that, seniors somehow don't have access to internet and computers. I think that that's something that we've got stuck in our heads. It's certainly the Council for Seniors and others are finding that the saturation rate among our seniors community and certainly within the municipality is very, very high across the entire social demographic, including those who are, on the lower end of the economic scale. So I think we just need to be careful that we keep that sort of fear in our head. Notwithstanding that, making print copies available is important too. Okay. Moving on then, and you'll have to put up with a couple of verbal reports, I guess 3 from me now, but I did want to update the council and the community on my trip to Victoria, and this is our first meeting since I did take that trip. I was down in Victoria the week of November 1st for the full week. I was just doing a tally there. I had 16 formal minister meetings, 4 informal. So I had dinner with a couple of ministers, lunch with another, breakfast with another. I met with both opposition. So I briefed the Green Party on some specific issues they were interested in. And then I did meet with MLA Bond and MLA Oakes, and we spent an hour together. I met with 2 different government senior bureaucrats. The Minister of Environment was at COP, so I met with his deputy minister and the head of Clean BC in one meeting, and then I had a meeting with an assistant deputy minister, Sarah Fraser, who we've done a lot of work with, but she's going to be responsible for the community and worker stabilization and support for things like the old growth deferrals and some of the changes they're making on the forestry sector. And we have a very good working relationship with Sarah and her team, so I wanted to really connect and try and shape that. That program's supposed to be announced towards the end of this month, so we had quite a discussion about that. I did meet with one of the non-government organizations, the environmental group called Organizing for Change, and it was the person who was on the old growth technical panel. I met with her on Monday, and the old growth deferrals announcement was made by government on the Tuesday, and I'll speak to that shortly here. And then I met with one of the consultants that we've been working with, who Foresight Consulting Group, who is looking at Quesnel as an innovation hub with a very large federal grant that would give us the resources to do a lot of the innovation that we're doing out of the Forestry Innovation Center. And he's quite keen to see us participate in that program. And then with the executive director for the Community Forest Association, and again, that was after the deferrals announcement, so we had quite a conversation about what that meant for community forests and woodlot licenses. So all in, over the course of the week, it was 27 meetings, and it was very strange because in many of the ministers' offices, I was the first real person to show up, and some of the young staff who hadn't experienced that before were kind of shocked that somebody was knocking on the door because they were getting ready to launch Zoom for another meeting, and here's this old bald guy knocking on the door trying to come in and talk to the minister. One of the young women said, "Oh my God, you're here." And I said, "Yeah, it's a live meeting." But the security people out front had the same issue. So they were really not quite used to, I mean, when that legislature is working, you've got all kinds of people coming in and out. Not the visitors go through security, but the booked guests and meeting, and of course, because I'm an MLA, I wear my MLA pin and I get access to the building. They just didn't know what to do. They kept giving me the wrong pass. I had to tell them, you know, what passes and where I was at. So it was, that logistics alone was kind of interesting to be involved with during the course of the week. Throughout the week, I had some consistent messages for all of the ministers. I wanted them all to understand that when we talk about Build Back Better, that they need to be more discriminating about the different states of the economy throughout the province. Our issue is not a decline. Our issue is growth. And so they needed to understand that as they roll out their programs, communities like ours, and a lot of rural communities, quite frankly, are moving into a growth phase. And the kinds of supports that we need are more growth-oriented than the, oh, we'll send you a team and we'll hold everybody's hand and, you know, we'll make sure everybody feels safe as they lose their jobs and so on. We're saying, yeah, that's not where we're at. And as I said to the Premier's office, I wasn't able to meet with the Premier because of his health. But the issue isn't jobs, jobs, jobs. The issue is job vacancies, job vacancies, job vacancies, and how do we fill them? And how do we keep businesses operating and then do growth on top of that? And of course, because some of the initiatives we've got on the go, the Northern Health Seniors Facility, the Barkerville Gold program, even Kandola's is looking at another 50 people at their mill, et cetera. We've got the kind of organic growth that's occurring. We've got the backfilling of the workforce that's occurring. And on top of that, we've got the potential of hundreds of brand new jobs that are going to be created over the next little while. So that was a key message that I gave to everybody. And I try to integrate with all of the ministries. It was really interesting because before each minister meeting, I reviewed their mandate letter, the minister's mandate letter, and reviewed the ministry profile and the ministry in the news. So I knew what was going on. I don't know how many ministers I had to say, yeah, it's okay for me to talk to you about this because it's in your mandate letter. Because they'd be going, well, no, I think you should talk to so-and-so. Yeah, no. It's in your mandate letter. Like, you've got a piece of this, and trying to, get the ministers to understand that they had pieces of the same topic, and we needed those pieces to come together for some of the initiatives that we were working on. So that was interesting to do as well. I pitched the interconnector project. I'll go into that a little bit more detail with respect to where we're at, to key ministers that were on Treasury Board. So that's going to be a Treasury Board decision. So I wanted Treasury Board ministers to be aware of that and the importance of that. And then as the week evolved, I realized that really, and we always take this approach at Union and BC municipalities, et cetera. We look for alignment and we look for solutions. We don't go with problems. But this time what I tried to do is also look at saying, at some point in this continuum of the evolution of climate change, the shifting demographics, the de-urbanization, if you will, and the rediscovery of rural communities like ours, the lifestyle changes, the government, both federal and provincial, need a community to point to say we want it to look like this. So, for example, when I was talking to Clean BC, I was saying to them, their targets and objectives are for new buildings and net zero and all of this stuff is 2030. And this is before, the weather event, but I was saying to them, no, you need to do it now. If we're going to be looking at 300, 400, 500 new housing units in our community over the next little while, we need to be equipped to actually build them to today's highest and best technology, not wait until 2030 when all new buildings are going to be built that way, and then we're going to be putting our hand up and saying, okay, now we need to retrofit all of these things that were just built 3 years ago. right? So the district heating project that we've got has quite a strong appeal to Clean BC. That's waste heat from the pulp mills into pipes. And some of the dialogue we're having around that, we may be able to do that in a way that it's going to new build as opposed to the old district heating approach that we've been thinking about, which is really disruptive to all of our infrastructure in our downtown core, where you have to rip up sidewalks and streets in order to put the pipe down. If we can figure out how to put that district heating into these larger sort of subdivision or new build complexes, that's less disruptive for us. So it was really sort of pushing stuff together to say, you know, on all fronts, we have our hand up to be innovators, to be leaders, and if we could figure out how to do it in an integrated way, we could become a really interesting community for people to point to say, this is how you do active transportation, walkable cities, you know, alternate heating systems and all of that stuff. So that there was a certain appeal to the ministers, and I'm in the process of following up on that. A couple of key points that I wanted to highlight for council. When I met with Minister Eby, who of course is the Attorney General and has housing, I really emphasized the fact that, you know, our hope would be that rather than the combative approach that they seem to be taking just now with communities, is that they do a lot more collaboration with us on the front end, and that we're not adverse to housing solutions, but we still have to maintain our planning authority. You can't negate our planning authority when it comes to building social housing. But the other piece I emphasized with them on the social housing is that we need to have the ability to provide 24/7 supportive housing for families and children in need if we're going to break this cycle. Right now, all of the social housing comes in on the back end of the cycle, where it's very difficult to pull people out of the kind of lives that they've found themselves in. You know, nobody chooses that life. But if we don't start investing with vulnerable families and vulnerable children, providing them with the kind of 24/7 supports, we will never get ahead of this. And the minister was quite interested in that. We're going to have a follow-up conversation of what that might look like, and we've had some ongoing dialogue with BC Housing around that. I did meet with Minister Osborne. I had a meeting with her directly, and then I had breakfast, a long breakfast with her, and she is someone who I think is a real up-and-comer in the ministry. She's a Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the kinds of things that I was chatting with her about that are in her portfolio is that she and the Minister of Finance are tasked with the rethinking of local government finance. So the UBCM report on you know, strong fiscal futures. So there's a memorandum of understanding between UBCM and the government to look at getting beyond just property taxes from municipalities. What would that look like? What kinds of incremental supports? And it was interesting speaking with her, because it's a trend we're seeing in our grant applications, et cetera, is the government, the province is not interested in backstopping people who don't have their own fiscal house in order. So they are not going to be giving communities the ability to not tax their residents for the kinds of things that they should be doing. We've seen that over the last couple of years, how many communities zero taxed in order to give people breaks, and have now created themselves structural deficits, infrastructure deficits, because they refuse to do the right thing on the taxation front. So the government's going to come out strongly. You have to have an asset management plan. You have to have reserves. You have to be on top of your capital. That's not going to be a bailout. So you have to be doing the right things. And again, we're very well positioned on that front. We've been doing the right things for quite some time. And then, of course, we had quite a conversation about the whole need for a community harm reduction program in conjunction with the harm reduction that's going out. You know, so I talked to her and the Solicitor General about how many bylaw officers we've added, how many RCMP officers we've added, and to pick up some of the issues issues around compliance and enforcement on that side. So she's going to be a very strong ally for us, and she continues to have bi-weekly or at least monthly meetings with all of the local government reps. Minister Calon has the Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. I had quite a long conversation with him, but in particular to the point of having Kandolas in here tonight, that whole mass timber strategy. It would be a crying shame if we were in the situation where over the next 10 years, 11 seniors housing complexes built with mass timber in our area were built with mass timber from Spain. And Germany. The first two projects, mass timber projects in the province of British Columbia, the first one in the Premier's riding was built with mass timber from Spain, and the second one was built, I think it was down in the Okanagan, from Germany. So now Kolesnikovs down in the Kootenays have invested heavily and are ramping up on the mass timber. But if we've got a homegrown mass timber facility here, we need to connect and make that part of what's going on. So the minister was open to that. Met with Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, had a lot of conversation around the future of Southern Decath Nation Alliance, the QGIS property, where we're going on that. Public Safety and Solicitor General. I'm sure he's a tired gentleman these days. The head of Emergency Management BC was in there too. And what we were talking to them about is the need to be able to do risk planning and to do advanced mitigation work, so that emergency avoidance. Currently, Emergency Management BC can only work with us in an emergency. So you'll see in my column this week, I think one of the outcomes that needs to be closely examined with the result of what just happened down south, and make no mistake, what down south is experiencing, we've been living in for quite some time. Because year over year, we have to initiate our emergency management process. We have to take the lead. If you take a look at the staffing that the CRD has added on the emergency management front, because local government owns emergency management. Well, now a lot of mayors and a lot of regional district chairs, the GVRD and others down there, have really woken up to what's been said at UBCM for years, where emergency management does not reside with local government. It has to be a provincial program. And so the minister indicated at that time that they're actually looking at bringing legislation forward that would see the Emergency Management Act change, so that they are able to engage with us for pre-planning, emergency avoidance, the emergency itself, and then stronger mitigation and adaptation, all within a new set of legislation that would come with additional resources. But based on what's happened recently, I think they also need to look at regionalizing that more, and it needs to be a provincial responsibility with us as partners. So that was good. Minister of Tourism, I didn't get anywhere with MRDT with her, unfortunately, the hotel tax, and we'll have a follow-up conversation with council on where we're at on that just now. But we are going to follow up on the difference. The way that the government understands marketing just now is still old school destination marketing. So you have a destination, you have a product, you have a company that delivers that product, rafting, fishing, whatever the case may be, fly-in resorts, etc. And that's where a lot of public money goes. So the CCCTA, really that's what they do, is destination tourism. More and more tourism is becoming community-based tourism. It's where people go to communities, have an experience in community while they explore the trails, while they explore the fishing holes or whatever the case may be. And really at this point, tourism nor Destination BC really understands community-based marketing the way that we're delivering it now. So there needs to be a change there. Had a good conversation with Minister Simons and had breakfast with him. He's the Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. We want to do a lot more with that ministry over the next little while. But in particular, they have Work BC, so he's responsible for Work BC. And we're really shopping this program that we have for retraining people on alternate harvesting practices. We need to have people trained on these alternate harvesting practices, alternate equipment. We now have a simulator available to us to do that kind of work. The Finns are still very interested in coming and helping us, as is the training company out of back east. So I've got a commitment from them. They're going to be following up with us, particularly past the old growth announcement. Very interesting conversation with Minister of Mental Health and Addictions around, again, the need for us to have more robust resources. The Minister of State for Childcare we were joined by the Minister herself as well, so I had both the Minister of State and the Minister in, and we've got a report on tonight that's an outcome of that with respect to where we're at with childcare spaces. But again, I pitched to them that idea of providing more supports to vulnerable children and families on an ongoing basis, and they were quite interested in that. Minister of Forests, you can imagine the kind of dialogue we had with the Minister of Forests, but just a quick update from that, because the Minister had just made the announcement. I met with her on the Thursday. She'd made the announcement of the deferrals on the Tuesday. So for those of you who are aware, 2.6 million hectares of the province have been set aside in a minimum 2-year deferral process. I immediately talked to West Fraser. They did a gross assessment of what that means for us. That's probably about a 30% hit on their productive capacity. If we continue on that trend, it will have significant potential operating impacts here. But we have an opportunity with the work that we're doing with the First Nations chiefs, with West Fraser, our Forestry Innovation Center, to, rather than do what Burns Lake intended to do, which was a truck convoy to Victoria, and Merritt was going to do a truck convoy to Victoria, and everybody's going to go protest. You know, we're taking the approach in partnership with West Fraser and our First Nations is, yeah, we're going to have to start making these hard decisions. And we can fight every one of these decisions. We can beat our chest that climate change is real and we've got to do things differently. And then when we're asked to do things differently, beat our chest and say, yeah, but not on my watch. We're not going to do it. So the approach that we're taking, and we're hoping to convene a meeting of all of the partners in early December, is that we think we can actually embrace this from a values and intention perspective, actually find a way to protect those values that the government's trying to protect while continuing to support our operations here. And West Fraser's been a really good partner in us finding a way to do that. So I'm hoping we'll be able to report to Council a counter-proposal that we're making to government on that. But other than that, we had lots of conversations with the Minister of Forest, and I was able to brief her on where we're at with the QJS property, because she, of course, has lands in her ministry. Minister of Transportation, I'll update Council on where we're at with that project separately. It's articulated with the Johnson Bridge. There's some direct articulation with the future of the Johnson Bridge, Johnson Avenue, etc. But I'll do it by way of tabling a letter that I'm currently crafting to the Minister that outlines the whole issue, etc. The Minister is not adverse to moving that project ahead. But when I met with him, which was before all of the destruction down south, he was indicating they're really pinched on the first 4 or 5 years of their 10-year transportation strategy, and that's where they're, over subscribed. The back end of their 10-year strategy, if we can move it into that domain, it looks like it's something they could put in, and they're not willing to commit to stage 2 necessarily without being willing to commit the actual capital to get the project done. So we're working through that process to try and figure out how we continue to advance the project and not get into a situation where his staff are looking at replacing one of the bridges where it is. So again, I'll give you more detail on that as we go. Minister of Education was an interesting meeting, and I'll be frank, one of my agenda items for the minister is we would like a hard force in the education legislation requiring boards of education to consult with local government on their capital planning and their growth planning. Right now, it's the other way. We have a requirement to consult and to make sure we've consulted with them, but there's no requirement for them to consult with us, and that has to change. It should not be optional. It's not voluntary. It's not, on the, whoever the personalities are of the day. It should be an absolute hard requirement. And I was able to, put a pitch to the minister that she completely understood. For example, we've had just a recent conversation with our local school district where, we caught them off guard on some of the things that we were planning on doing, and they caught us off guard with some of the things that they were planning on doing, and that has to stop. It can't be ad hoc. So the best way to do that for consistency is to make it part of their legislation. Had an interesting meeting with Minister of State Cullen. So he's the one that's doing the restructuring of the natural resource operations, forestry, lands, etc. That announcement for the restructuring is supposed to happen this week. That was an important meeting for us because our forest landscape planning pilot, we need to understand the difference between what they're doing on land use planning and landscape planning. So it's a bit technical, but it was a very important meeting for us. And I think we had good traction with his deputy minister. And then the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, who's a champion for our community. I feel for her these days. I know she did a tour down to all the farms that lost their livestock today, so it's pretty hard go for her just now. And we're working, Manager Reed and I are working on a follow-up on that where we may have been able to get some more pretty timely investment into our food innovation hub and allow us to move it into another level of operations. So that was really good too. Okay, so those are the main things. I'm now in the process of doing follow-up letters and calls, and the two active files that are near term. Lindsay is going to update us on the childcare one, and then Manager Reed and I will be chatting with agriculture on the food innovation hub. Those are our more immediate ones. So long-winded, but hopefully brought you up to speed on all the stuff that's going on down there. So comments or questions? Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recall, and I think you'll recall too, at least on a couple of occasions in my report upon returning from the UBCM, I had suggested that we do exactly what you've done here. And it's abundantly obvious that is way more effective than the 15-minute cookie cutter show that we have at the UBCM. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and just a reminder, Councillor Paul, I didn't do it for 2 years, but I think I did it like 3 years in a row post-UBCM, and we use UBCM to sow the seeds and then go down and follow up. And I agree with you. It's much more productive, much more focused for us. So, okay. Councillor Runge.
Yes, thank you for the great report. It's extremely detailed, and it looks like we're going to need someone at the helm for multiple years going forward. Thanks for the great report. It was really good.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything else? Okay. So the next one, again, my apologies. These are, I'll be briefer on this one. So as council is aware, we're now trying to meet bi-monthly with the chiefs of the 4 First Nations that have Quesnel as part of their traditional territory, their traditional practices. The key 4, because there was 5 at this meeting, is LHTAKO, NASCO, Luskus, and Estella. But we do put an open invitation out to Algacho because Algacho was formerly part of the Southern Daketh Nation Alliance. They've subsequently withdrawn. So Chief Price from Algacho did join us in this meeting. We start all of the meetings with a roundtable, so all of the chiefs have an opportunity to talk about what's happening in their community, some of the key issues and so on. And, right now, quite frankly, it's COVID, COVID, because they're all struggling with that. And we did have some questions around the old growth deferrals, because all of those communities have pretty active logging operations and forestry licenses. So that follow-up will be occurring shortly. We had a very substantive meeting. It was a 3-hour meeting. We brought Northern Health in to update the chiefs on the G.R. Baker project. There's some opportunity for further engagement with the First Nations on some of the aesthetics and the fine-tuning of the building itself, the entrance, the look and feel of the building. But Northern Health, and we've been lobbying for this for a little while, Northern Health has taken it to their board, and there will be a naming of the addition in recognition of the special nature of the land that building is on, and the First Nations history here. So they're engaging in a process. We're acting as a facilitator to get them in touch with the chiefs and councils and the elders in that naming process. We brought BC Housing in to talk about filling a gap on Aboriginal housing needs in short-term and medium-term housing. Right now we have shelter and we have long-term supportive housing, and we have nothing in between. And if you actually look at our transitory population, it is predominantly Aboriginal descent, 85–90% Aboriginal descent, and those individuals come into town for a wide variety of reasons, whether it's short-term medical stays, whether it's for a training program, for work, to visit family, etc. And we don't have an appropriate level of shelter to accommodate that. So we got agreement that we're going to work on this. It's one of my follow-ups to find a way to coordinate that work and to do some planning. It'll start with a needs assessment first, and then start to look at how we might address those needs. BC Housing's indicated if we could do it in a single building where that level of stay could be accommodated, they would be partnering with us, and they also pointed to some other resources. So this is a very important initiative for us, and all of the chiefs were really keen to advance it. We brought in the president of the College of New Caledonia. He had been trying to meet with the chiefs for a while, but COVID had gotten in the way. So 2 of the communities put their hands up where they wanted to immediately do follow-up with the president on some programming that they were interested in. And then I've had ongoing dialogue with the president about some programs that we would like to do going forward. We brought Alfred Waugh in, the Indigenous architect that we're using to design the Silcotin Chiefs Memorial Pavilion around the helipad area. So he did a presentation of the initial designs for that. Estela in particular, the Silcotin representative, will be taking it back to the Silcotin Chiefs at their council meeting down in Williams Lake. But on balance, people were quite excited about it, including, and in particular, Chief LeBrun, whose traditional territory it would be built on, even though it's commemorating the Silcotin Chiefs. And then we had Shasta McCoy from Urban Systems come in and provide some preliminary design for the amphitheater park conversion to a residential schools memorial. And again, well received, and staff and I had a meeting with Shasta today to follow up on how we step that forward. It's probably going to take, it's 2 kind of phases. One is the physical transformation of the place into a gathering place, so seating and access, all of that stuff. And then the other is the interpretive expression of the residential school experience. So, and that's basically 3 parts to it. One is the mural, the other is a proposed statue of commemoration, and then the other is the wall of the library that would be a storytelling opportunity on that wall. So we think that we need to get to a short-term proposal on the physical transformation so we can get that going. And then the longer-term work is going to be on more of the expression, so the artistic expression as well as the storytelling. So we came up with a bit of a game plan today that we'll take back to the chiefs. I always check with the chiefs at the end of the meeting to make sure that they feel that it's productive and it's meaningful for them. And this time it was kind of, okay, so when's the next meeting? Which I think is indicative. When you have productive meetings, people are willing to meet again. So we're looking at mid-January to have our next meeting. And one of the key agenda items on that one will be an update on where we're at with all the mental health and addiction services we have in town, because it's not well known by the leadership of our First Nations communities, all of the things that we have in play and how they relate to each other. And I was just meeting today with health at lunch, and so we've got a commitment that we'll have a pre-meeting, make sure we outline it all, and then they'll come in with their mental health officers and others to talk about what we're doing on that front. Okay? So that's an update for the Chiefs meeting, and I'll update you after each meeting on that. Questions or comments? Councillor Paul?
Thank you. On the matter of the Indigenous residential school memorial, as we all know, or at least I think we know, that present site is a memorial to Jules Maurice Quesnel. And my question is, will the funding envelope for that new project include anything with regard to relocating the memorial so that the name of Jules Maurice Quesnel isn't lost?
So first off, it's not a memorial to Mr. Quesnel. There's a plaque there that recognizes him, but it's not memorializing him. He had no relationship with Quesnel, has no family in Quesnel. You know, he just happened to be here as part of the, so-called discovery. So, but we've had this discussion before, Councillor Paul. We'll ask our museum curator if she has any ideas about a plaque. That is not what we're interested in spending a lot of time and energy on at this point. Right, and in particular with Jules Maurice Quesnel, who just by happenstance happened to be in a boat and had a name that was named here. I think we need to be careful what parts of history we hold on to. But we've canvassed this before. This is the second time you've asked that question, and the answer is the same. We'll ask our curator at our museum for some advice on that. Okay. Questions or comments other than that? Okay. So the final verbiage from me is an update on the Salvation Army Warrior Cafe closure and on where we're at with some discussions around an emergency cold weather shelter. So on the Salvation Army food situation, it was very unfortunate series of events. I think Director Turner, we found out by happenstance, from somebody who found out by happenstance late Wednesday prior to Remembrance Day, I think is when we were initially told that the Warrior Cafe was going to close. Then it was Remembrance Day. And then Friday we tried to do some phoning to find out if it was actually going to close or not. And I think, other agencies were getting caught by surprise. There was a bit of a panic setting in. At a minimum, the Warrior Cafe feeds, it does about 80 meals per time it's open, and it's a big, children's formula, raw materials to other service providers that create food out of it, etc. Like it's a big deal in our community. Sure enough, on Monday, there was a close sign on the door, and it was closed. No explanation to the community, no notice to the community whatsoever. It took us the rest of the week for me to be able to connect with the current leadership at the Salvation Army to find out what was going on. They basically have refused to meet with us, and I know other agencies were reaching out to try and meet with them as well. Long and the short of it is they have refused to get vaccinated, and so as a consequence, they're not, because the Salvation Army has a vaccine mandate, they were not able to continue to operate. I had a pretty terse email exchange with that leadership because, I felt it was a disservice to the community that they serve and to our community not to work with us, give us advance notice if that's the path that they knew that they were on. We've agreed to disagree on that. And it took me quite a while to reach out to their head office, but we now have good contact with the head office, with the area commander, a person by the name of Dave McPherson. He's all in on helping us trying to resolve this situation. And so Kelsi, whom you met tonight, Councillor Goulet with his other hat on with the Telecom Society and the Friendship Center, and Corbin, I can't remember Corbin's last name. Bright, who's the food security person funded under the Canadian Mental Health Association. That team of 3 are going to coordinate with the area commander out of Burnaby with the Salvation Army. One of the options that they've made available to us is if we can find a way to coordinate the function, they will open the Warrior Cafe or allow us to open the Warrior Cafe and run the food service out of that location. And they will get us, all I was trying to get out of our current leadership at the Salvation Army was their major food donor list. That was the other thing that happened. Major food donors were phoning agencies and saying, we've got all this food we're collecting, where do we put it? Because we can't get it to the Salvation Army and they're not answering our phone calls about what do we do with it. And I know Tony was getting calls, the homeless shelter was getting calls, etc. So, they did a great disservice. I think that the key for us is the Salvation Army for decades has played a fundamental role in our community. And over the last little while, they've lost some purchase. The thrift store's been closed, the dining hall is closed, and the last piece, the Warrior Cafe and the food service, closed without notice. I think we're now on a path where that stimulated a conversation with the leadership of Salvation Army, and the commitment that I've been given is that they're going to come back up to full service, and they're going to make that happen. And the area commander will be our point of contact to make that happen. So we'll keep you apprised. The ideal situation for us is to be able to run the program through the Warrior Cafe until the Salvation Army is ready to restaff it and take it back over themselves. And I've already begun conversations with the area commander about where the thrift store could go and things like that, so ramping those programs back up again. So we'll get to a good place. It's just been a bit of a shock. In the interim, so council knows that we have a new peer group. The acronym is NOPE. I can't remember what it means, but the acronym is NOPE. We met with them at length last week. They're very keen to be a proactive partner in our community, and Kelsi and themselves were able to get some funding through the First Nations Health Authority. So they are providing bag lunches, and they're just down the street on St. Laurent. They're just down the street, so people can actually see sort of where they're at easily from where Warrior Cafe is. So there is a stopgap there just now while we try and get the program back up and running again. So that's the update on that. Any questions or comments? Okay, we'll keep you posted. I'll just do it by email as this evolves. And then the other one came out of the discussion we had with the chiefs in BC Housing, and then came out again because we invited BC Housing to our kind of interagency meeting around the Warrior Cafe closure, and that is an emergency weather, cold weather shelter. And we have been experiencing more individuals sleeping on the streets since some of the COVID benefits have gone and some of the supports have gone. And because of a structural change at the shelter, Seasons House as well, where they're having to be tighter on their numbers. And so we do want to try and take advantage of the opportunity that BC Housing is offering of creating an emergency shelter. So at this juncture, we're looking looking at a couple of potential locations for that. If we can find a location that we think would work, and again, this is just an open cots, a place to be warm overnight, preferably a little kitchen where some food could be made, and washrooms and so on. So if we can find a place, then we'll work with some of the agencies out there on the operating model for it. So that is in progress. The nights are now getting colder, so there's a bit of urgency to this. But BC Housing's assured us if we can find a place and the operator, they've got the funding, and we can make something happen. So, and it would be, I think it's sort of November 15th or October 15th to March 15th is the kind of window that they operate on when they talk about an emergency shelter. Is that right, Director Turner?
There's a time frame. I would have to check the specific dates. It's either that or very late October. Rings a bell too.
So that we're only talking about really a truly temporary situation to just give people the opportunity to get off the street in those cold situations. Okay, so that's just a quick update. Anything from council on that? Okay, so I'll stop yakking in your ear now. We'll go on to the staff reports. Okay, next staff report is an outcome of the policy and bylaw report that you heard from Councillor Runge. So Director Bolton.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel Appointment of Officers and Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw No. 1914 of 2021. So the Policy and Bylaw Committee has reviewed all these changes and recommends the amendments. So they include clarity on who approves the Deputy City Manager position, the addition of encroachment agreements and covenants to the signing authority section to add clarity, some increase to dollar amounts in the bylaw. So this bylaw was created in 2014 and last updated in 2017. The increase to auto signing authority from 50,000 to 100,000 will take place when the new council starts. That's just because we require signatures from all of council for the bank, so it's easier to do it then. And all other changes will occur on adoption of the bylaw. So the recommendation is that council provide the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel Appointment of Officers and Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw No. 1914 of 2021 in the bylaw section of the agenda.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? We'll do the vote in the bylaw section. No questions or comments? Okay, and this was a motion of support for this through the work of the bylaw committee. So, okay, so we'll deal with that in the bylaw section. All right, next, Director Turner on the official community plan rezoning amendment for Doherty Drive. Yeah.
Do I declare conflict because I'm a tenant at 668? Technically, my name's on a tenant agreement with 668.
Yeah, again, so it would be your...
and I will declare a conflict just for that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Director Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. Council will remember that they seen this application and project back in July 2021. The project at that time was a little bit different, and I'll point out those differences for council. Again, this project is to do official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments for the permission to convert a 2-level commercial building to a 3-level apartment at 668 Doherty Drive. The original proposal that council seen, and there was some questions and some concerns that we had taken back to the property owner and the designer, were that the addition of 33 Willis Street was added to the property, was being added to the project as a source of parking for the project. There was a lot of complications that came out of that proposal that we were trying to resolve. And in the end, and after good discussion with the proponents, we've decided that probably the best way forward is to extract that parcel from the whole project proposal and just proceed with the conversion of the conversion of the units for the apartment dwelling. Again, this apartment dwelling is going to be small units that typically is not associated with vehicles, and the proponents have agreed that we would do some sort of agreement on title that would restrict parking allowances, so the tenants would be aware that they do not have parking on site unless there are the few spaces that are provided. I just wanted to give that as a summary, just to get you caught up as to where we are. So I'm going to just go into a little bit more detail on the background. The apartment conversion will add 15 new units to the inventory of units in the area. The development will require an OCP and zoning amendment change. 3 parking spaces will be all that is provided with this proposal. Again, it's proposing it for low-income housing that will support seniors and individuals living on assistance, as these demographics are in supreme need of housing. There is a covenant that we talk about that will have to be removed, but that's insignificant. We will do that as a housekeeping amendment on our end. I do want to note that we were discussing a proposal to go to a CR2 zone. I am now, as you'll see in the plans, just doing a spot zone in the C2 area. This alleviates a bunch of concerns in terms of making the development, which is already built. I mean, the building is there, the footprint is there, having us to go through additional processes for setback variances, et cetera. So we are just having we're just going to propose it as just a clean spot zone that's added to the C2 zone to allow for the exact 15-unit apartment. Is there any questions before I move on from council?
Go ahead, Councillor Runge.
So do we ask with regards to density then? Because there actually are some fairly significant changes from July to here, and this density, it's like at 126 units per acre.
The density is 15 units. So the density would have had to, the other reason we're changing is the density would have had to be increased to allow for the 15 units based on the footprint of the building. So that's why we're doing it as a spot zone to just allow this facility at that location.
Okay, and then although it wasn't in our agenda package, I don't believe, is the design still intended to be the same, the design of the units as of the July 20th, I think, meeting? Because this one just had an outside view of the building, I believe, and like, is there any, when does the discussion happen with regards to the size of the units? And because when I look at these units, I just think they're actually too small and they don't actually allow any kind of storage. And I don't know where tenants would store their stuff.
These units are significantly small. They're intended to be small for a certain demographic and affordability of the unit, right? So these are intended for individuals and probably those individuals that would have not a lot of storage requirements.
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm getting at, because even though you have a unit of under 300 square feet with no closet or no place to store a bike or no place to store anything, I just wonder if there was any discussion with regards to keeping the intent of this, but possibly having a fewer units in it. Like, when do we discuss that? Because, like, that's a very small building to have 15 units in. Like, is 12 a possibility, or do we go with the 15? And I don't know if this is the time for me to ask that question.
Yeah, the questions you're asking are entirely appropriate, so don't worry about that. Go ahead and ask away.
Thank you. We have not discussed the additional units. The questions, of course, happened originally when we were discussing how they came up with this amount. There was discussions with the proponent that would be the unit numbers that would be required to make this financially feasible when they were looking at the design. That's my understanding in terms of cost of construction. This, even though it's a conversion with the addition of a unit, a complete new floor is going to be significantly costly, and they're going to be low income, low rents. So there is going to be some economics here that the proponent's going to have to work through.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to it. Unit 5 and 6, I just don't see those as units that actually make someone, that they don't answer the question with regards to having anyone in that unit other than someone who had nothing with them and kept nothing with them into the future. And those are the discussions. I'm not sure when I can have those discussions, or I'd love to.
So I should state that these are not abnormal times for having units of this size being proposed in communities. These are being proposed in a lot of communities and are being developed not only by individuals but definitely by BC Housing and the like in order to create units units of a very small nature, so that there is a capability for individuals to rent something that's more in line with their needs and their possessions, which in sometimes is very little.
Yeah, but sorry, if I could, and again, Councillor Runge, don't apologize for asking questions. This is the time to be involved in these kinds of discussions, and the questions are definitely appropriate. I think, to your point, Director Turner, that yes, this kind of situation where, you know, you've got individuals who basically live out of one bag of stuff, right, and don't have lots of stuff. But I think the point on storage, the point on, you know, is there an opportunity for a bicycle lockup, for example? You know, we just had a presentation from Kelsi that we're looking for lockers and storage capacity for people who are either on the street or, you know, couch surfing or whatever. These units are quite small, so is there the possibility for on-site storage, particularly I'd say for bikes, to be part of it, and could that be considered in the development planning from our perspective?
Definitely, that could be something that we could work with the proponents on to see if there's some way to work that in there.
Okay, Councillor Runge, go ahead.
But it will take us going back to the zoning bylaw too, right? Because then we wouldn't want to proceed with first reading at this date because, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we split the two things, because then we don't have to rescind first reading, et cetera, right? We're just doing the discussion just now, and we can just stand down first reading if we're not ready to do first reading, right? So, Councillor Runge, other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, I feel like a little, I don't know what you want to call me here, because I believe in that. I believe in the concept. I think it's a fabulous concept. I just think we might be pushing too much into this box. And going forward, if we look at electric bikes, we look at all those types of things that are moving forward that actually are a possibility for people of low income, of you know, seniors and things like that. I'm just looking at how do they get around in some of these units. And when I look at the images or the pictures, I don't even see room for a TV, and you know, they will have a TV. I know, and they will, you know. So for me, it's storage of clothes, because we have a few different seasons here that they, at least some of these have no closets even in them. You know, is there a common area for them to meet out there? So if someone were to be smoking or something like that, where would they smoke? With only 3 parking spaces, what happens when they get picked up? Where do people park to pick them up? All the, you know, those are the questions that I have that I'm not sure that are for me currently being answered. So I don't know when that discussion can be done. You know, I'd love to have it with the, you know, I don't know where we have the discussion here, I guess. Thank you.
Councillor Vic, and then Councillor Paul.
Notwithstanding the great comments about bike storage, I think that there's some real merit to that, since that's a mode of transportation for certain that would be heavily utilized. I know the housing needs in the community are varied, and understanding that, you know, for storage space, like, that should be a concern, but there's an acute need for housing, and I think there is going to be a select segment of the population that would need a unit that is just sparse, small, and the alternative being perhaps being on the street or in a shelter. So I understand, you know, we're trying to make convey a plan or convey a vision of having storage, room, and everything else, but some people's needs are not to that level. So I guess I'm disagreeing to a point where we need to offer a housing option for those that are living on the margins. And then, of course, we have housing that is beyond that. So I just don't think we should discount the size because it's small, because for some, that's just what they need, and that's what they can afford, and that's where they need to be. So I'm just thinking we need to have a varied options, and this probably suits some. So we shouldn't discount that.
Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question regarding the variance. We're going to be faced with having to agree to a variance regarding the parking, and I'm wondering about the permanency of that variance in the event that the dynamics of the tenants change over time to the point that, hey, they do have a vehicle. And so are we painting ourselves into a corner by allowing a variance without any sort of escape clause? And as I was considering this business of parking or lack thereof, then I came up with the thing about the bicycles. Okay, so if the guy doesn't have a car, he's got a bicycle. And then that occurred to me, well, where's he going to park his bike? So I would look forward to more discussion in that area as to whether it's a common area, or pardon me, a common storage area or what. But I believe that there should be some allowance for bicycle storage.
Okay, just a couple of comments from me, and I think what we're probably going to have to do is let it go to the vote in the bylaw and just see what the vote does on this as to whether there's more refinement or not. So Director Turner, a couple of the other pieces here, because of the target audience for this, I think about the apartments across the street, and again, those would be regarded as low income and targeted at that. And if you take a look at some of the decks that they've got and how full they are, bikes or, a couch that's sitting out there or whatever the case may be. I think the storage issue is a potential spillover issue that does need to be somehow addressed in the design in some manner. The other piece is, if you take a look at the parking lot across at Doherty, you've got a lot of derelict vehicles, that are sitting in that parking lot, and the parking lot is empty, so there's a lot of people who live in there who don't have vehicles, but we've had issues with derelict vehicles there. We've had issues with their garbage cans being filled up with, mattresses and various other things like that. So my question for a private development like this, do we have tools like a housing agreement or a good neighbor agreement that we could apply so that, yes, the intention of the developer is clear on the front end, but how do we actually ensure that that intention is maintained over the life of the building and that it doesn't become a problematic property?
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, there's a few pieces of this, and it's kind of always the issue when it comes to developments and where the developer's willing to go prior to having certain pieces of knowledge, right? So in terms of there's some design work going on for the overall building, but we have not gone into, or the developer has not gone into a design phase with an actual architect that will actually design this. So there's still some unknowns with respect to that, obviously, and it could come back on that end. What I think the developer is looking for here is some just assurances. How could we get just full residential, and about how many? So for the housing agreement, absolutely. This we expect. This is going to be significant dollars. We expect this property owner, and we've had tons of discussions about applying for the multifamily housing incentive bylaw for this, which will come with the housing agreement and a number of initiatives. A covenant has already been discussed, and we will be going forward with a covenant on the property with respect to parking and making it clear that there will be no street parking, and it's the responsibility of the property owner to control parking of tenants on the street, and they are to be entering into agreement with each of their tenants that they will not have a vehicle in the area if they don't have the parking space.
Okay, and in terms of financing this seems to me to be a good target for the BC Housing's Housing Hub, and whether or not that level of financing is going to be looked at, because that's specifically targeted for private developments that are targeting this level of housing and offers below market rate interest for those kinds of investments. So, that connection I think should be made, and that may make the finances of the development a little bit better too. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, so on your advice, Director Turner, I think the intention of council, is that we would like to see more residential development. To Councillor Vick's point, I think there is a target group out there that this does appeal to, notwithstanding some of our concerns about some storage and things like that. On your advice, do you think we should proceed to the first reading, or do you need to do some work so that first reading is actually the first reading of the actual development proposal? What's the substantive nature of the changes that we may be suggesting may be needed to make this advance?
Well, provided that the current proposal is a spot zone that specifies 15 units.
Yeah.
If we don't want it to be able to have 15 units, we shouldn't go forward on the reading at this point. We should hold back until we get a more defined unit number. In terms of I should note to council, we are coming back on a development permit. So this is just phase one. So we go through the zoning process, after following first reading of this and consultation, there will be a development permit process that will look into the design and the facade, form and character a little bit more closely with that as well. But unfortunately, this at this point is where we get density, and we talk about density. So we'd have to stop here.
So I have the right as the mayor to ask if the proponents who are in the room and the person who's doing some of the design work would feel comfortable if you want to speak to the issue. So the issue we have in front of us is first reading would pin us at the 15 units, and so whether or not you could speak to that matter. Yeah, please do.
Good evening. My name's Eric White.
Just wait until you sit down, Eric. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah, been a while.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, all. Just to respond to that unit size, that actually all the units do exceed the sort of the minimum spatial requirements for this, and it is sort of a mandate of the proponent to try and create smaller and basically more beds. You could almost akin them to. Given that we do have dire housing needs in Quesnel, more might be better in this case, as opposed to them being more palatial or having more storage sort of brought in. So that's kind of where we were at with that. As far as the zoning goes, I'd like to see, just for my personal preference, to keep that 15 number. I know there's a lot of work we can do around that, say to get more storage, and that advice isn't wasted. That's for sure.
So you'll need to, I don't think Ms. Hartley got the full, for our records, it's name and address, right? Or relationship to the proponent?
My name's Eric White. Do you want my address?
No, the company.
My company is Eclipse Projects. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
So the key question then again that you've answered for council, and then I'm going to go back to Director Turner. This is the first time this particular configuration of council's had one of these, so it's a learning exercise for some of the
No, that's good. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Part of
it. So really what we're doing is advancing it as a 15-unit enterprise with a spot zone.
Yeah.
If in the design of that, and you've heard what some of our design questions are, what some of the ongoing questions are about, what does that look like over time, and especially to get into the development permit process to take advantage of some of the incentives we're offering. I'd look to the Director Turner. So if we advance this so that the project continues to advance, we always have the ability to, if we're still not satisfied at the end of the day, to stop it later in the process if necessary, correct?
Thank you. Yes, if definitely by third reading we could stop it. Yes.
So just so that council's aware and the proponent's aware, so that there's a bit of an impetus to take into consideration the expressions
I think the nature of this project is fairly flexible. We've been working with Tanya quite a bit over this. We've gone back and forth a lot and tried to figure out ways how to make it work. Basically, like the proponent does feel strongly about the sort of the target audience for this project, and I think it's a good one too. To be honest, I agree with it. It does, as you talked earlier about housing. There's this and there's this, right? But there's really nothing in between. This does offer something, say for the peer groups, for example, people who are getting on their feet and getting some income. This becomes a stable rental for somebody coming off the street. They might not have too much. Bike storage is noted. There's lots of potential for bike storage. We do have areas for this and for some outdoor communal space as well available as part of this project. And so those things we have put some thought into those. The smaller of the units, there's a couple that are quite small, I agree with you, and they're just sort of, it's a factor of ergonomics and whatnot, but they do actually meet or exceed minimum requirements for an apartment of this nature. One other thing, we are going to be doing some some adapting to create the adaptive housing model, or just to be compliant with some of those guidelines too, at least where we can. So there'll be, try to be involved. I've noted down this housing hub too. If there was anything, say contract units or anything like that, I'm absolutely certain that the client or my proponent would be.
And that's what the housing hub's designed
of some kind.
The housing hub is designed explicitly for that, and the fact that we have an incentive program incents them to be involved too. So
is that a funding stream?
Yeah, it's a specific part of BC Housing to fund market development of targeted housing.
Yeah, I've noted that. I'll put them in touch for sure.
And we can put you in touch with the folks that can do that. And I know Tarsum, Mr. Dillon's been trying to look at that property for quite some time to develop it. So long before even you were on, Mr. Dillon and I have had conversations. I know he's had conversations with previous mayors. So it's a long-term vision for repurposing that building. So Director Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. And one of the reasons I thank you, Eric, for coming up and speaking, because there's a lot of unknown yet in terms of the actual space in and around the building and within the building footprint as this new floor gets established. So I guess you'll go back to the drawing board and figure out whether you can sneak some of that in there.
We've got it's literally a matter of inches here and there and a few different little things. But we're actually
thank you, Eric.
Pretty close. Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, so Council, on the report, are there residual questions or any clarification? We will deal with the bylaw in the bylaw section. Councillor Runge, you got some more?
Yeah, so then we talked about the good neighbor agreement. Is that also in this portion, or does that come into the future?
Well, the housing agreement would come up later on through the development permit process.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. So we'll move on and we'll deal with it in the bylaw section then. Next, the Childcare New Spaces Grant, Coordinator Blair.
I might just wait till the other councillor's back.
You should be in the chair. You're paying more attention than the chair is.
The purpose of this report is to update Council on the BC New Spaces grant for the Quesnel Childcare Centre and to gain Council's approval to submit a new application to the program. So in summary, an updated quantity survey was obtained for the grant-funded childcare center to be located at 420 Webster Avenue. The quantity survey far exceeded the approved 2020 Childcare BC New Spaces Grant Fund. After conversations with staff at the Ministry of Child and Family Development, it was determined that grant funding could not be topped up to complete the project. Staff was instructed the best way to potentially continue this project was to cancel the current contract for $1.36 million and to submit a new application to the program with the updated quantity survey. The new application will include funding for 57 new childcare spaces at a cost of approximately $46,000 per space, including soft costs such as construction insurance and permitting and realistic construction contingency to mitigate any further market disruptions. I just want to make a note. I don't think I included it in the staff report, but the funding that the ministry ideally wants to fund is $40,000 per space, which is why we originally submitted an application for a smaller number of spaces. And in the original application, we were applying for only 34 spaces and trying to include 57 spaces in the building. Whereas now, when we were talking with ministry staff, they suggested that we could also apply for the spaces that we would be losing from Quesnel District Daycare Society, whereas we weren't allowed to apply for those before. So now we've submitted an application for 57 new spaces and the updated quantity survey.
Thank you, Coordinator Blair. So this is one of the direct outcomes of a dialogue. I took this issue down to the two ministers. We talked it through at length. We actually thought in the room with the ministerial assistants and the ministers there that we had a bit of a slam dunk. We would just turn this around and be able to fix it. But once the folks who were responsible for the program got a hold of it, we're having to go through this route. The discriminating factor for us is in the first pass, the spaces that are moving from the facility that will be closing down were deemed not to be new, so we couldn't include them in the formula. But as I sat with the ministers, I said, but they're going to close. Like that facility is going to close, and if we don't accommodate them in the new facility, then we're going to be coming back and saying we just netted, the net difference would be 14 spaces or something like that, right? Or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, 23, I think.
23, was it? So they have had agreed that we can do that. And then we found there was a ceiling. Really, each community had kind of up to a ceiling of 3.2 million or something. You could put a proposal forward and make it work. We weren't aware of. We thought it was all driven by just the formula per space. So we did get some intelligence, but we had hoped when I came back and I told staff, I thought we had a more immediate fix, because now we've got to keep the clock ticking. We're going to have to see what happens with supply chain and pricing and all of that stuff as it goes. So we have to go down this process. The one thing I would point out to council is post whatever you do with the recommendations, I'd like a further resolution on a strong request to the government to include the 80,000 soft cost in the new formula, because expenditures prior to application are currently not eligible, but those expenditures were directly associated with us having approval for an eligible project, right? So it would be good if they just pick that up as part of it, because it's all going towards the same project. So we'll come back to that later. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one thing that also should be noticed with this recommendation is that the first line of the recommendation is a standalone line from the second line, or from the second clause there. So it's first we are agreeing that we cancel the contract for the Childcare Capital Funding Program. So that's the existing funding which we have received, and it's been fully granted to us. We're canceling that. We're returning that money, and there is no guarantee, no written guarantee that we will get that second larger grant. As the mayor has talked about, I think every indication is that they want to fund that, and they're certainly interested in funding childcare spaces, and we've got a very attractive proposal in front of them. So I think every indication is we will get funding, but when council votes on it, they should be aware that there is no guarantee that if we turn that money in, that we will actually get granted. Of course, balancing that off, that little bit of risk factor is the difference is $1.1 million is what we're asking for more. So that's the quid pro quo on that risk.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we can't build it with the grant that we've got. So so that's really what our conundrum is. But I think it's good advice, City Manager, that when we do the recommendations, it should be a standalone recommendation for canceling the current contract. That's one. And then two would be then the advancing the next level, right? So, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to staff. And this has to do with the capacity of I guess, our population in relationship to the number of spaces that government will authorize or fund. When they're looking at population, I do hope that they're looking at the population of Greater Quesnel versus just the city of Quesnel.
Yeah, so in our childcare needs assessment, they looked at the population of the area, the service area, and I think in order just to meet the BC standards, the BC average childcare standards, we need 84 new spaces. So this will really jumpstart us. But yeah, they take into account not just the city center, but the surrounding area as well.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Councillor Vic.
I'm not sure if it's to staff. I suppose it would be. So the project is going from a 1.36 million to a 2.6 roughly. So is this the scope of the building will accommodate the extra childcare spaces? So the designs we've seen, or we saw a rough schematic, I guess. So that's out the window now, and we're going to see a completely new build on the property?
No, that design, it took into account all the spaces. It took into account the 34 new spaces that we were trying to build and the 23 that we were carrying over. So it will accommodate the full 57. We might need to tweak it a little bit, value engineer it, but we included a large contingency in this new application just to accommodate for, as we saw, like the huge increase in building supply and supply chain issues and stuff. So hopefully it doesn't need to change that much.
Yeah, I think the big differential to your point, Councillor Vic, is that we tried to build the building for all the spaces with the formula for just the new spaces, and we hope that we could somehow stretch those dollars. But when push came to shove and we actually looked at building those spaces, the reality is it's 1.1 million out of scope, right? We just couldn't do it. So it's good that we can go back with a different formula. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so I'd like to do it then as the first motion, which is the first that council agrees to cancel the current contract for the childcare funding program, New Spaces Fund. So can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Paul, Councillor Vic, second. Any questions or comments further on that? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And then we'll do this as a twofold one, because the second part of this is required for the grant application, right, on the continuous operations. So it would be for the application at $3 million, and then the commitment to operate for the 15 years. Councillor Goulet, so moved. Seconded. Councillor Vic. Any further questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And then I would like to add a resolution that council would like serious consideration from the provincial government to incorporate the $80,000 in soft costs already occurred in a successful first round application to be considered as costs that are eligible in the second application. Okay. Councillor Paul, seconder. Councillor Runge, any questions or comments on that? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for that work. And I know Director Norburn is here tonight because this is another one of his babies. And this is one of the targets, and Director Norburn will be reaching out to Kandola as one of the targets for potential incorporation of the mass timber into it. So next one then, the Riverwalk Estates, Director Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. The subject of this report is to review the overall site design for 7 new single detached homes in Riverfront Walks development on Dyke Road. These developments are in the floodplain and riparian area development permit areas, and that's why they are requiring review. They are also, I should note, in a farm and character DP area, but we don't review those as a strata development. All of that goes through the strata, so those are not of concern with us for these particular developments. This is actually a very big success for us. This strata has been for a long time undeveloped, or only a very few lots had been developed, and we have worked with the strata to do a bunch of work to get this going, and more so Icon Homes has. This development permit will permit Icon Homes to proceed with the good work they've been doing in terms of building out the strata development.
It's proposed that the new dwellings to be constructed will meet certain conditions. This gives them a pre-approval basically on all of these, which are going to be consistent conditions for this developer over the 2 years for both the riparian area and the floodplain area conditions. So what we're doing here is just setting up, yes, for all of these developments, you meet these conditions and meet these at building permit stage, that you can proceed. This gives them the ability to, and to be quite honest, there's been quite a number of these already sold. These are ready to go. This developer's been doing quite a bit of work in terms of getting these on the market. There is one development, one parcel that they are working with the existing owner and to develop in purchase of it, but we're also putting that one on the docket, and that owner has given us approval to do so. Any questions about this proposal? I try not to go through it in detail because we don't like to read it all and it gets a little bit boring. But if there is questions on the specifics, by all means, let me know.
Hey, questions or comments? Councillor Runge.
Yeah, could I get a PowerPoint?
Now. Any real questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, go ahead.
I'll go into the recommendation then. The recommendation is that council approve DP 2021-39 for the construction of 7 single detached dwellings on strata lots 10, 25, 29, 30, 34, and 40, and 41 of District Lot 1122, Caribou District Plan PGS 217, as proposed on the attached plans, subject to obtaining a legal survey for each dwelling, excluding Lot 10, and meeting the needs that meets the following requirements at the building permit stage. The proposed dwellings meet and exceed required floodplain setbacks of 30 meters from the natural boundary of the Fraser River. The lower floor systems of the proposed dwellings must meet the elevation of 476.5 meters above sea level, and there's a 15-meter buffer area from the natural boundary of the Fraser River must remain undeveloped, and the native vegetation must be maintained. Only applicable to lots 10, 34, 40, and 41. Those would be the lots on the riverside, obviously.
Great, thank you. On the recommendation, Councillor Vicks, so moved. Seconder, Councillor Paul. Any questions or comments further on the recommendation? Councillor Runge.
Yeah, actually, a little. With regards to what's been happening globally with weather events and things like that, does this put us into any kind of a legal situation should this floodplain pop higher than the 200-year average?
Well, we are one of very few communities that have just recently redone our floodplain bylaw, and with climate change was considered in that. So I think we are actually in better condition than most communities.
Yeah, I think with our new floodplain mapping, with it taking into consideration the extreme potential, the 476.5 meter marker is above what you would consider a nominal 200-year flood plain. But anything that's on water right now, it's buyer beware and builder beware. There's no way that we can guarantee it. So one of your options as a local government, and I think there's going to be some discussion of that, is do you build anywhere near water? Do you enable people to build anywhere near water? So to your point, if you're building near water, there's risk. But we've covered our liability by the requirements that we've put in for the data that we have available to us. And that's how we cover our liability, is what you know at the time of the development, and are they the sort of the best available data, right? Okay. Okay. So on the recommendation, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay. And another housing one. I think you need another planner in your department or something, don't you?
Thank you. That might be A good idea. The next report is just about the housing agreement, speaking of housing agreements, for 109 Bowron Avenue. As you guys know, this came to council some time ago and has been a bit delayed in getting developed, which is why this has taken a while to come to council. There need to be a few things that were certain before the housing agreement was finalized. The housing agreement has been finalized now. And agreed to and signed by the proponents, and now we can move forward with the housing bylaw. The housing bylaw is something that needs to be, or the agreement needs to be within a bylaw, and also needs to be registered on title. So it's quite a process, but we are going through it, and we are happy to see these units finally being built. Is there any questions on the housing agreement?
And just for clarification for the public, this is the one we often refer to as the Front Street affordable housing, but the actual legal address is on Bowron, right?
Thank you. We've decided, right, it was referred to as Front Street all the way through the development process, through the change in their fronting onto Bowron, the address changed.
Yeah, just so that we got that clarification. Any questions or comments on this? Seeing none on the recommendation. Sorry, we're just going to deal with the recommendation in the bylaw section. Yep, so, okay. Okay, that's it. Council information package. Council's had an opportunity to take a look at. Nothing was brought forward. So on the bylaws, on bylaw 1910, that's the business regulation licensing amendment bylaw, third reading. Can I have a motion? Councillor Goulet, so moved. Councillor Runge, second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. On 1911, the City of Quesnel Comprehensive Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw, final adoption. Councillor Goulet, so moved. Councillor Vic, second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. The 1914 City of Quesnel Appointment of Officers and Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw, the one that we had reported tonight, first, second, and third readings. Councillor Runge, so moved. Councillor Vic, second. If we want to get through this quickly, folks, I need some hands going up. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The bylaw 1912, City of Quesnel Official Community Plan Amendment for 668 Doherty, first reading only. Can I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Vic, so moved. Seconder? I have no seconder for this. Councillor Paul, second. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Do you want that recorded? Okay. So that motion has passed. Councillor Runge. Sorry. No, yeah, so it's still 3 because my vote counts unless I say no. And actually, Councillor Goulet, and I don't think it's a big issue at this point. It's only first reading. But being in the room and not signaling a vote is a yes vote. So it's an actual recorded vote. So just for your edification, that's why the chair's vote is always recorded as yes, or noted as yes, unless the chair signals otherwise. Okay.
Mayor, just one question, if you wouldn't mind. Sorry, the recommendation also, was the full recommendation passed then? Because it also included the requirements for the consultation and council's approval of the consultation process?
Then we need to go back. That should have been sort of flagged for us. So with council's forbearance, we can go back to that. Have you got it in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you just read it for us then?
Okay, so I'm not going to worry about the first reading of the bylaw. I'm just going to state the recommendation also includes that council has considered consultation as per section 475 of the local government bylaw and direct staff as follows to send correspondence to the West Quesnel Business Association and the LHTAKO DENE First Nation.
Okay, so can I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Paul, so moved. Second, Councillor Vic. questions or comments? Councillor Runge.
Yeah, can I have a question on this one? So if we were to have a community, a plan with the community, would that require that we also ask some of our other stakeholders with regards to this? Because there's potential for other issues that could occur. You know, I'm just thinking of what happens at some of our housing developments here in town. That do we ask other people for input on something like this also, like the RCMP or the when
that normal checklist.
Does the normal checklist follow? I guess is my question.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Turner.
Thank you. There's a number of items to consider that are within the legislation that have been put in the report for your information, and then really it's council discretion on whoever else they'd like to see put into the consultation process. We have put our recommendations forward.
So at this juncture, all we're really doing is saying, show us the plan for a 15-unit spot zoned area there. There's all the other detail is going to start coming at us as this advances. Okay, so on that recommendation on the consultation, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, and then we did the bylaw reading. So now we're on to Bylaw 1915, the City of Quesnel Housing Agreement. No, we've got a repeat here. Number 5 actually shouldn't be Doherty Drive, right? Number 5 should be for the River Walk. Yeah, riverfront development. It's just been a cut and paste that didn't get corrected that I didn't pick up. It's for the 7 detached dwellings.
No, yeah. So there's 2 bylaws. There's an OCP and a zoning and bylaw. That's why there's
sorry,
2.
you're right. It's the OCP and the zoning, right? So we're not. So then are we missing? Okay, we may have to come back. Sorry. Anyway, let's do the OCP, which is the OCP change parallel to the, the zoning change. Number 5 is a zoning change parallel to the OCP change. So again, mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Paul, so move. Councillor Vic, second. And on that change, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, no opposition. So then I guess my question, and it's my error again, so with respect to the development permit for the 7 detached dwellings,
there's no bylaw for that.
Bylaw. And just to clarify, because my brain's a little bit fuzzy after a long day, we voted that at the time, that recommendation, we didn't bypass it? Okay. You don't think we voted it? Yeah, I think Councillor Vic's right. I just want to be clear. We don't want to have to come back and revisit it. So that's, yeah, okay. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, good. So then the final bylaw, 1915, City of Quesnel Housing Agreement Authorization Bylaw, first, second, third readings. Councillor Paul so moved. Councillor Vic, second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Great. No changes to upcoming meeting schedule. No changes to committee appointments. Any announcements or future events? There is no future. So, and there we go. Any gallery questions from the peanut gallery that won't share his whatever that drink was with us? Okay, so motion to adjourn then. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Goulet, Councillor Paul. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much, everybody. That was a good long meeting with lots of work done.